Listen close, it's the occult folks. It's the occult folks. It's the occult folks.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Lord Byron Jester. I kind of found his Instagram through another show that I've done, and he has a super cool practice. So with that, would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your practice and kind of how you got into everything?
So yeah, my name is Byron. Lord Byron's been my nickname since I was like 15 years old, maybe 16. And yeah, so I'm originally from the East Coast, and my family's home was on the small island on the eastern shore of Virginia, and the house that we lived in, it was the old funeral home for the island.
Oh, wow.
So and I mean, yeah, I think at one time they had like something like 100 bodies there or something, you know. Uh, so so I kind of grew up like seeing spirits, and I was going out of body since as long as I can remember. So that probably laid a foundation for
Yeah.
me to eventually get into spirituality. But yeah, you would just see spirits all the time, and no one's going to tell you they're spirits. No one's going to tell a child that, oh yeah, this used to be a funeral home. This should be packed with dead bodies.
Yeah.
So they just tell you, it's your imagination. And it took me a while until like, when I got older and I realized that it was a funeral home. And I was like, so wait a minute. All that stuff was real. I knew it was real,
Yeah.
because they would tell you, no, that's just your imagination. It's like, I'm pretty sure I saw a woman walk down the stairs. I'm pretty sure I just saw that,
That's pretty vivid. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're not gonna, tell a child that, freak them out, give them nightmares.
Yeah.
So, and then, so like I said, that laid a pretty big foundation. And then we eventually moved where I went to school on this one military base on like the mainland of Virginia, where there was like some naval there, and I guess you could say some intelligence down there, like naval intelligence and stuff. But it was really interesting when I don't know if you've ever heard of like the GATE program, gifted and talented
Oh,
education or
yeah.
something like
Uh-huh.
that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this had anything to do with that or not, but all through the early part of my education, every once in a while, it was so random too. The weird thing is too, I would always dream that it was going to happen right before it happened. So like, I would be like sitting there waiting for them to pull me out of class to test me, and it never failed. And there was only like one other kid in the school that I saw getting tested, and I never talked to him or anything. I think he was a grade older than me,
Hmm.
but these tests were really bizarre. Like they weren't testing your IQ or anything like that. They were really just kind of testing your ability to keep a secret, if you would keep a secret, if you would follow orders, if it was the right or wrong thing to do.
Holy
It
shit.
was all that kind of stuff, and and they would put you in these weird scenarios where it's like a really complicated gray area situation, just to see how you would like, like I said, like if you would run your mouth or not.
Yeah.
It was really bizarre, but it was like really involved. Like it was really intense kind of questioning. There was no right or wrong answer. I don't know what they were looking for, but and I'm sure they were looking for multiple things. Like I'm sure if your brain type kind of branched that way, they would possibly have a use for you. If it branched that way, I'm sure
Yeah.
it wasn't one thing they were looking for. But I remember at the end of the school year, I came home. My parents acknowledged they were getting divorced because it was really starting to ramp up until that point.
Hmm.
And then that's how I moved out to Washington and stuff. But yeah, so at the beginning of my life, I was going out of body all the time as a child. I still do. I've gotten better at controlling it because there's times where I could just start thinking about something and then I check out, I'm gone. But I've gotten
Oh,
better at that.
yeah.
Because one thing I've learned as an adult, chicks do not like to be ignored. You
They do not.
know,
Yeah.
so that's something you got to kind of nip in the bud right away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that laid a pretty big foundation. And then when my parents got divorced and we moved out to Washington, my mom hooked up with this guy, and this is like third grade, fourth grade time, right?
Hmm.
And he had like these like giant TV boxes and like like refrigerator boxes full of like all these like old VHS horror movies. Had like all of the like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th up until that point. So I think like the last one he had for Nightmare on Elm Street was like the fifth one, The Dream Child.
Hmm.
I don't, but so I had all of those, and that really shaped my upbringing. Just having like every awesome horror movie you could ever
Yeah.
imagine at like 8 years old.
Yeah.
But the other thing he had was giant boxes full of like every conspiracy and occult book that was popular at the time.
Oh shit.
So I had like a bunch of Crowley and books on astral projection, which I was already pretty good at, and books and all like, I mean, just stacks and stacks of books on JFK, UFOs, you know, I mean, all different kinds of stuff, MK Ultras, and what was that that one out in Philadelphia, the was it I forget the name. I'm having a little brain fart, but and that really shaped my upbringing too. So I was basically like already like awake to conspiracies, third grade basically.
Wow.
So that was before, and then when the movie JFK by Oliver Stone came out, that really popularized. Like I remember like right around 93, all these new books and reprints of old books of the JFK assassination were coming out. But
Yeah.
so I was already like hip to conspiracies before Ruby Ridge, Waco, Texas, OKC, I
Yeah.
was already I was already hip to it before that stuff happened as a child, man. And so
Damn.
that really, shaped it. And I remember I performed a ritual out of Francis Barrett's The Magus, and the Summon of Spirit. This is like fourth grade. I had like a crystal ball like this big. It was like real crystal,
Yeah.
and I did that and stuff. And so, but magic was something like I kind of kept putting on the shelf at the time, even though I got into it at like a super young age, and I was having all these experiences. I kept putting it on the shelf, and I'm kind of glad I did for the most part back then, because when you're like 10, 12 years old, you're not supposed to be like doing all this fruity, weird stuff in a dark room by yourself. You're supposed to be like playing sports with your brothers, riding a bike around town, getting in fist fights with kids from other neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So
Ding dong ditching.
yeah, totally. We did a lot of that, man. We were bad kids, honestly. We were,
Same. Same,
yeah,
man.
so, but yeah, so that was a big part of my journey, and yeah, so from there, I guess like like I said, I kept getting back in the magic and then putting it back on the shelf. And there wasn't a
Hmm.
lot of good information on it back in the day,
Yeah.
unless you lived in like LA or New York or Jersey or something. You're pretty much screwed finding good books.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even hear about chaos magic until like the 2000s,
Wow.
so,
Yeah.
I mean, especially where I was living. I was, basically in an agriculture community in Western Washington. But, so the thing that really kind of lit the fire in me again was I was living in a college town in Western Washington, just like 20 minutes from the Canadian border, 30 minutes from the Canadian border.
Hmm.
Anyone from from Washington knows the town I'm talking about. Anyway, it used to be the coolest place I ever lived in my life until everyone went crazy a few years ago. But whatever.
Yeah. I feel like
Uh,
a lot of that kind of ruins and
yeah.
stuff, but yeah.
Oh yeah. But so it's a hippie town. And I was playing in a bunch of metal bands, and I was like growing and selling weed at the time. And someone brought over like a lot of DMT, like a lot. And so when I started blasting off on DMT, that was like really like kind of relit the fire in me.
Yeah. Holy
So
shit.
yeah, and then so like some started getting into like fresh green smoothies and superfoods and whole foods and natural cures and all that. Because I was already into conspiracies and stuff. So like as I started becoming more spiritual, health started playing a role in that.
Hmm.
And like a lot of people now, like there's a lot of people that just woke up a few years ago. So a lot of people don't really understand like how big of a deal like the raw food and superfood and natural cures movement was, back in like 2010, 2012, 2013. A lot of that kind of got hijacked, I feel like,
Yeah.
but it's still going pretty strong. There's still like a lot of people smart with it, but it was like almost mainstream back in like 2010.
Hmm.
So I'm living in this apartment. We move into this apartment, and it's so weird because this is another one of those cornerstone things, and let you know that like how like magnetized I am for this kind of stuff from my childhood.
Hmm.
But so we check out like three apartments in the same complex, and I remember going to the lady and telling her like, "Yeah, we like the energy in this one better. We will take that one." And she had this look of like she turned like ghost white, and she had the look of someone who saw a ghost, and she was like, "Really?" And I remember thinking right then and there, like, "Why did someone die in there or something?" And actually, what popped in my head was a suicide. So we moved in this apartment, a bunch of bad stuff start happening. I start like drinking a lot too, and you start, like every day I'd go and look in the mirror and my face would look different. Like every day my face would look different living there. And this one time, my girlfriend and I we smoked some DMT in there, and we saw this like slightly overweight woman hanging from a ceiling fan in our dining room, and we don't have a ceiling fan, by the
Yeah.
way. And it wasn't like a bad trip or anything.
Holy hell.
It wasn't like scary or freaking us out. It was just kind of like part of the background, like like there's that.
Yeah.
But and so when we move out, we move into this house out into a rural area, an amazing place. Basically like what you would imagine like a beautiful place full of like fairies and elves to be. It was an amazing
Yeah.
place. But
Well,
as we're moving out, I noticed that all of the apartments on the top floor, all surrounding my house, all had ceiling fans in the dining room. My house was the only one that didn't. My apartment was the only one that didn't have a ceiling fan. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense now.
yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Holy
so
cow.
and then so like right after that, moving to the country, everything's going great. And this one little douchebag put a curse on me. And that was like when it really clicked, because one of the reasons why I kept putting magic on the shelf, because I never doubted it worked,
Hmm.
but also, like when you're like doing yoga and drinking green smoothies and stuff, you manifest things pretty well. I was also making ormus and stuff like that, drinking ormus at the time. And you manifest really well. So it's like one of those things where I just didn't even think it was necessary
Yeah.
until someone put a curse on me, and then I felt just how real and physical and external magic was. And then after that, man, I was like balls to the wall. Nothing was going to stop me.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, because it was a good curse. The guy, it was a direct hit. Yeah, so it could have killed me. And you can't go to the cops about a curse. You can't go to the doctors for a curse. So what are you
Yeah.
going to do at that point? So the only thing you can do is really just grab the bull by the horns and figure it out. So
Yeah. Was it
yeah,
somebody like pretty close to you? Was it pretty personal or?
yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And you know, it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me, really.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so so I go hard on magic, and I've always had this natural ability to find good information, which is, when you're researching conspiracies and all different kinds of alternative research, you do kind of cultivate this ability just to find good information. You don't know what you're
yeah.
looking for, but you know it as soon as you see it,
Yeah. I
and you're
know
like,
exactly what you're
bingo,
talking about. Yeah.
Uh, so I got super good at it, and then I was like trying to strip away like what I actually need to get good at it, and started simpling it down, simplifying it. And while I'm going through all this, stuff, that was when I really stumbled on radionics, and I I stumbled on an interview by this guy. He was part of like a remote viewing program in naval intelligence back in the 70s. His name was Jeff Harvey,
Hmm.
and and he's gone now. He passed away. But that was like when I was listening to this guy talk, I was like, dude, this is so awesome. And then I started researching it. A couple of years later, I finally bought my own machines. And at first I was well, first of all, the machines that I bought aren't nearly as strong as the machines I make.
Oh wow.
Uh, but at first I was like, I got them to work right away and they were great, but I was like, did I really need to spend money on it? You know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
like, I could have got, I was just thinking, a servitor, a sigil, make a few, some candles and some incense.
So anybody that doesn't know, what is a radionics machine exactly?
Okay, so uh, radionics in its simplest form, and some of the old schoolers would probably argue with me on this, but in its simplest form, I consider radionics a thought form amplifier.
Oh, cool.
And it's a fascinating history, especially for me because it had this solid foundation of magic and
Yeah.
conspiracies. And radionics is one of those things that kind of blends magic and conspiracy. So it originally started, I think, I want to say 1918. This guy Abrams, he was a
Mm.
doctor, and when he would use a stethoscope on diseased people, he's would tap them, and he started realizing that diseased organs had a really flat note, but healthy organs would like resonate a little bit, have a little bit more of a of a thump to it.
Oh wow.
And so from there, he kind of developed the first radionics machine, and it was different than what people are using now. But within a couple of years, a lot of doctors started picking up on this, especially in the U.S., a little bit in Britain,
Hmm.
and they started like treating all these diseases with it, and not just treating diseases, but also diagnosing diseases. And eventually, the government found out about it, and the FDA, or maybe it was a predecessor. I'm sure the FDA was probably around back then because it was already after the American Medical Association was put together and the Rockefeller medicine took over.
Yeah.
So anyway, they literally the government came in, confiscated all the machines and destroyed them, and threw a bunch of these guys in prisons. And these are like
Holy sh.
doctors, like these aren't like
Yeah.
criminals. Some of them literally died in prison. They didn't even see the light of day after that.
Holy shit.
And yeah, it was pretty serious. And it started going on in Britain too. And there was a couple of radionics practitioners there are on trial. And as if you want to use the word luck, as luck would have it, the judge's wife had cancer, and this is like 1920s, where like cancer absolutely is a death sentence.
Hmm.
And the radionics practitioners were like, "Oh, really? Like, would you mind if we took a crack at it?" And the judge was like, "At this point, I'll try anything." So the judge gave him a witness sample, which is basically like a link. Back in those days, they would use like a sample of blood or hair or something
Yeah.
for it. So the radionics practitioners got rid of the cancer, no problem. The cancer went away. Judge said it was a miracle, dropped all the charges. So I thought it was pretty cool. The judge uphold his end of the bargain, and
Yeah.
and
Kind
drop the
of.
charges.
Yeah.
So it kind of after the whole medical thing happened, it kind of went underground a little bit, and it kind of resurfaced a little bit later on. It was being used for agriculture, and people would they started like using it to get rid of like pests on crops and stuff. And so they would put like a can of pesticide. I'll show you one of my more basic machines right here. This
Hmm.
is just a little 4 dial.
Oh,
So
cool.
this is the input, this is the stick plate and the output. So
Hmm.
the old machines were like kind of like bigger and more deluxe, but they would put a can of pesticide on the input plate and a picture of the crop on the output plate, or maybe just a sample from the crop, and dial a rate, and then they would get rid of all the pests. But then after a while, they realized that they don't even need a can of pesticide to get rid of the insects. All they needed was a picture of a can of pesticide to get rid of it,
Holy shit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And it was still pretty obscure. People also using it for cattle to kind of make their cattle healthier and stronger
Yeah.
and minimizing disease. Basically 1980s, I want to say, where a ceremonial magician by the name of Charles Cosimo picked up radionics. And he was kind of the guy that he was kind of the guy that weaponized it, He was like, "Oh my God, I could do so much cool stuff with this." So he
Yeah.
was the guy that kind of blew it up and brought it into the 90s, which kind of brought it to where it is now. He was kind of a pariah back in the day, and I guess some people probably still consider him a pariah, but I think a lot of that has kind of mellowed out, and I think people see him more as a pioneer and a necessary step in that evolution of radionics, but he would, people called him Uncle Chucky, but you could tell he was a nice guy, but he definitely, did some did some van damage with radionics too, so
Yeah.
but that's what brought magic radionics up to now. He was, that's kind of where it kind of became popular now, because now people are using it for healing and everything else, homeopathy, to just magic and manifesting stuff.
Hmm.
So that's pretty much what brings radionics to today.
And that's awesome. So like kind of what are your main uses for the radionics? And I see that you kind of mix it with tarot also.
Yeah, well, I like tarot cards as a witness sample because they already
Hmm.
have like a thought form attached to them. It's also associated with like the angles of the sky clock with astrology and the
Hmm.
tree of life and Kabbalah. So yeah, I like using those. But the thing that actually I find that works the best for radionics is I'll just show this up right here. It's basically like an automatic drawing thought form.
Hmm.
So what I do is I'll just like write down real quick what the thought form is, and then I'll visualize what it's doing. So I mean, let's just say you want some protection, right? So you
Hmm.
could just like imagine like Ares, god of war, you know, protecting you with like an army, like an army of spirits, and then just start automatic drawing. You just kind of start scribbling, and then you'll just feel it click, and then you'll just drop the pen. And I think that technique works the best. So, but if you're going to use like let's just say for like prosperity, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, you could put like some money right here. $2 bills from a leap year are used as good luck in like a lot of root magic. You can use
Really?
something like that, or you can use like set tarot cards or whatever, or you could just use a thought form like I did. So you put the input and the witness sample for the output, which is going to be your target. So you can use like a picture of someone or yourself. When it's me, I just uh, write my signature and you just write my name and my signature on a small piece of paper. So you put them right here, and then you'll start. Um, Here we go. Yeah, start rubbing the stick plate right here as you turn the knob, and then you'll get this where it kind of just skips over the surface. It sticks and it just kind of skips over the surface. And that's what they call a stick. It's basically a form of dowsing. So you do that once you get your rate after you do the stick plate with everything, get your
Hmm.
rate. You take the output witness sample and you put it over here to the output, and then just turn it on, let it rip. And but yeah, some of the stuff that I've used it for, man, I've used it for everything. So when I was still living in Western Washington before I moved out here to Utah, I was working in a
Hmm.
bar, and the COVID lockdowns got really bad on the West Coast, and we basically almost lost the bar. And I got to the point to where I could turn business on and off like a light switch with the radionics,
Oh
and
wow.
and dude, I mean, we broke numbers after that. We crushed it, and this is going to sound kind of like a jerk, but we're guys. Sometimes we bust each other's chops a little bit. So there's
Yeah.
times when it would be my day off, and I would just like crank the machines up and maybe use like the tower card to make it chaotic. And then I go to work finally on my Monday, and people are like, dude, oh man, it was awful. You should have been here, man. I don't know where they came from. It just hit the fan, you know.
Yeah, just like all kinds of people coming in.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and made it all chaotic, and I felt bad about it after like the second time I did it, so I stopped doing it, because you know.
Well, technically a good, kind of a good thing for business,
Oh
so
yeah, it just sucks if you're working by yourself,
yeah,
which might,
yeah, true.
which I kind of felt bad about, but whatever. But so that allowed me to like get enough money coming in to save up and then move out here to Utah. So, that played a big role. I mean, that was
Yeah.
awesome. But just being able to turn business on and off like a light switch the way I was. And here's another funny thing about it. Uh so there would be times where like I'd be working on a skeleton crew, or maybe I was just tired after like running the machines for so many days and just burn out. Some days you just want an easy day.
Hmm.
Not every day you just want to grind.
Yeah.
So I would use the machines to make it slow too. And what's funny about that is it was easier to make it slow if I pumped the bar full of like clean, loving, purifying energy. Like basically do like energy healing on the bar and clear out all the negative energy. It was
Yeah.
easier to make it slow doing that than it was to actually try to make it slow. Like if I filled the bar with all this clean, healing, loving energy, it was almost like people were no longer a vibrational match for the bar. you
Yeah.
know?
Interesting.
So it was
Yeah.
actually easier uh to slow a business down like that. And then
Yeah.
oh man, I mean, I've healed people, saved a few lives, and
Holy
so
shit. Yeah.
yeah, you can do all sorts of stuff, man. I mean, like I said, you can heal people with it. I like using radionics to program stuff, um, like talismans and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
even like a lot of the lights here, I've programmed.
Yeah. So
You
you
know,
mentioned doing like kind of rituals like when you were younger. Did any of these like come from any kind of texts, like any specific grimoires?
yeah, yeah. The main book that I was fascinated with, and I think it was just because it was from like 1802 or something, was Francis Barrett's The Magus.
Hmm.
And so what's interesting is, so my brothers and I, we got baptized Mormon as soon as we came out to Washington, even though we weren't really Mormons. It was really confusing. And
I could see that. Yeah.
and we were like rowdy kids too, like I mean, you're talking like all boys, like a little dysfunctional. We're coming from a broken home. Like our dad's military, so he would like be gone and then come back and then be gone and then come back. So
Yeah.
we were, yeah, I mean, we probably weren't the right kids to just have running around a Mormon church. Uh, but but it was like right after we got baptized Mormon that I got this like weird like interest in magic and started reading Francis Barrett's The Magus and then started summoning spirits and stuff. And so the reason why I added that little caveat is, I mean, most people know that Joseph Smith, the founder of the Church of Mormon, was a sorcerer. He was a magician. Most people know that.
Oh, interesting. I
And
don't think I did at all.
you didn't know that?
No. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. He was all about it, man. He was
Holy shit.
like cutting goats' necks with ritual daggers and everything, man. He was the real deal. And
Holy shit.
oh yeah, but one of the books that he had that played an influence him at the time was Francis Barrett's The Magus.
Damn.
So like right after I got baptized Mormon, I'm all of a sudden working through the same book that he worked through,
Yeah.
And so I almost wonder if there was like almost like a thought form of Joseph Smith or maybe the spirit of Joseph Smith that kind of played that influence on there. Because I do notice like some of the people, there's a lot of hardcore magicians and black magicians and sorcerers that did come from the Mormon church. And
Yeah.
there is yeah, it's a fascinating thing. But yeah, that's so Francis Barrett's The Magus was like the main one at the time. And the yeah, that was probably it.
Does that so does that kind of give you like a step-by-step process with some of this? Is it ceremonial magic or Solomonic?
Yeah,
Like the summoning of
yeah,
and
but I mean, I'm like, what, 9, 10 years old. I mean, how old is a third grader and fourth grader?
oh yeah,
Like something
yeah,
like
it's
that.
pretty early.
Yeah, which is not an easy read, man, because people in the 1800s had a way more sophisticated understanding of language than we do now. I mean, that is not an
Yeah.
easy read for a child.
Well, that's
But
really cool to have had that. Like
yeah,
I would have been like all into it.
yeah, I mean, it was cool, and it's funny too because when you're a little kid, like reading is so lame. And then when I see all these books on like conspiracies and the government killing JFK and UFOs and books on magic and summoning spirits, I was like, oh, so reading's not that bad. I've just been reading the wrong stuff. You're reading the
Yeah.
Berenstain Bears when I should be like learning how to summon demons. You know?
Literally, that's so funny. That's kind of how I feel right now. I'm like, the past few years have been going through that kind of transformation of just reading a lot more just because you find the stuff that you're actually interested in. So it's
Oh, yeah.
super fascinating, man.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a good idea to start collecting physical books, because it's just one of those things. Because as everything becomes more digital, they can just edit anything they want.
Yeah.
AI can just fudge whatever they want now.
kind of muddy the waters.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was fascinating. And so, like at first, like I said, I bought a few machines. I liked them, but after like a few months of using them, the machines got noticeably stronger.
Hmm.
And that's another thing too. Like radionics machines, they do get stronger and smarter over time. And that so then I bought a couple more. And then when COVID happened, you know, all that stuff started happening. You know, Especially on the West Coast. I mean, there were some people talking about taking like forced vaccinating people that didn't want to deal with it and throwing people in
Yeah.
camps if they didn't want to wear a mask. I mean, they were just saying stuff, but at the same time, I was like, I ain't doing that.
Yeah. It
You
was
know?
also, yeah, it was happening like in Australia where they're like rounding people up that didn't, or got
Yeah,
COVID and putting them in camps and stuff. So like people were saying it over here, but it was like actually, happening.
yeah. There was a video uh, early into COVID too. It was in Canada. I think it might have been Winnipeg, where this family was like a husband and wife and a baby. Get off the plane. The baby had a discrepancy with its PCR test. Which why would you swab a baby? Like
Yeah.
that's so disgusting that they were doing
Jeez.
that.
Yeah.
And so basically, like they took the baby from the parents immediately from this discrepancy, and then like a white truck shows up, takes the baby from their hands, and then drives off with it to like an undisclosed location until they figured out the discrepancy. And it was like, whoa, you know.
Yeah.
So that was when I started figuring out how to build machines. And I was like, all right, I'm going to need a lot of firepower if I'm going to deal with this. And then
Yeah.
I just kept getting better and kept getting better and kept getting better at doing it. And then you know, I had no interest in even selling my machines. I was just happy just making them just for fun.
So what do the machines like consist of? Like is there like specific material or wiring? Were you able to kind of
Yeah,
like take what they kind of used and kind of amplify it and make it even like kind of more powerful?
yeah, I definitely perfected the schematics that I saw online that I was first reading. My
Hmm.
machines now are so much better than I was making them then. But a lot of it is just, your circuits, you got the input, the output. Yeah, so the input just goes with the audio jack. So I'll put that up here too.
Hmm.
My machines also have audio jacks that you can daisy chain
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
multiple machines together. And I also remember when I showed you the thought form, I make these
Hmm.
little basic machines. They don't have any
Yeah.
dials, and these work super good.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much like stuck with these now. Like I don't think I'm going to make myself bigger machines that have a bunch of dials on them anymore. I think I'm just going to stick with those ones. But it depends on what type of machine you're building, but usually, like 99% of radionics machines use some type of audio amplifier.
Okay.
So, the input goes through the dials, and each dial has a crystal wrapped around it.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
then it goes into an amplifier and then out to the output.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if you're just listening to this, it's kind of like a smaller box. I play music. So to me it kind of looks like a pedal, like a guitar pedal in a way.
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
not much different
two
than that.
yeah, with like kind of two screen faces and a sort of looking that one of them's an output, one of them's an input. But yeah, with
Yeah.
the one that you showed earlier had the knobs. This one didn't. But yeah, man, that's super cool. Extremely
And this is
fascinating.
Yeah. So this is just a four dial. I like to use this one when I'm doing interviews just because I don't have to dial a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
but I also make five dials, six dials, seven dial, and nine dials. And then I have some beefed up machines coming out later this year that I'm gonna have 12. But yeah, so it goes through an audio amplifier. There's some secret sauce to it,
Yeah.
like that I don't really care to talk about, but
That's
because
okay.
it's not just materials. There's also some mojo going on,
Gotcha. Yeah.
because it is like I said, some of the old schoolers would argue with me on this, but because it is a magical device, I don't think they would consider it necessarily a magical device. But I'm coming from an occult background,
Yeah.
so
Well,
I
yeah.
look at it like that.
Yeah. Do you think that they just don't consider that because you're just putting like kind of a newer age spin on kind of an older technology?
Yeah, 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 and So I literally make my machines and incorporate, some of the magical element to it, uh,
Hmm.
to where they don't even have to be plugged in to get results, you
Really?
know. And and then another thing, because I mentioned, that they cost money, and to some people, three, four, $500. Radionics machines can go up to like $3,000, $5,000
Holy
for
hell.
the more deluxe ones. And but mine are usually just like three, four, five, right in that range.
Hmm.
But like to some people, that's nothing. They can spend that, no big deal. But other people, that's you got three kids, rents like what, $3,000 on the West Coast for like a small house, and
Yeah.
life gets expensive.
Hmm.
So one of my main goals when I make my machines is for them to get fast results and for them to pay themselves off in a short amount of time.
Hmm.
So I want it to be more of an investment than just a price.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm sure. Like, especially if you use it a ton, to do this sort of work and like, sort of mediumship or magic, I'm sure it pays itself off, pretty quickly. So, do you think,
Oh yeah.
like your own machines work better because like you made them, like yourself? Do you think like there's like that kind of connection also?
Yeah, I noticed that with the first couple of machines that I made,
Hmm.
even though they were like atrocious compared to what I'm making now, I still keep them around because it is nice to see like where I started from and where I'm at now.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I started making the machine, you can almost feel it become alive. You can, as you're building it, you're like breathing life into it, and that might be because I work on psychic development a lot. I do a lot of magic
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. Maybe but yeah, I do think whoever makes the machine, I think that adds a lot of potency or maybe even a retardation, depending on the quality of the human being that's making it.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
yeah, like kind of like intent behind it and everything.
yeah, and then. Like I said, I don't really want to give the secret sauce, but
Yeah.
everything is juiced up, most people are sensitive enough to where they can feel it just opening it,
Oh
just
wow.
holding it in their hands, they can feel it. So, which is my goal, because
Yeah.
I also just, I have an excessive personality sometimes, like I'm a Taurus. That's what we're known for.
Yeah. Hey, Sam. Yeah.
Oh, you're a Taurus too?
Yeah. Hmm.
Oh, okay, cool, man.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Do you do a lot of this type of work for other people, or is it mainly just like for yourself? Or
Yeah, I do, man. And like I just did a group write with one of my colleagues
wow.
back in February, early March. I think it was February, late February,
Hmm.
and that was cool. But yeah, I do a lot of workings for people, and like I said, when I worked at the bar, um, even before I got in the radionics, when I was just doing magic, I would always work all these miracles with people, and do stuff for them. And it's so funny. And little insider tip: that's a good way to get good at magic when you start helping people with their lives.
Hmm.
And but you get so used to doing magic, it's like not a big deal. You say some words, you do some stuff, bada bing, bada boom, something happens.
Yeah.
And you get so used to it. But like, there's so many times where I would do something for someone else, and then they would just show up like 3 weeks later, a month later, or however long it took to fully manifest. And they'd be like, dude, it happened, just like you said. This happened, and this happened, and I got it, just like you said. All excited,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, oh, that's cool, man. Like, I'm glad it worked out. That's awesome. Like,
Yeah. Just
because you
kind of
just get
knowing
so
it's
used
coming.
to it, you get so
Yeah.
used to it, you know. And I'll tell you, like, one of the things that really made me want to start taking to the next level, and maybe pursuing it professionally was gosh, I want to say it was 2016, 2017. While Purge is not landed on a full moon. That's like one of the witches' holidays. And so and like I do try to do magic on full moons and new moons, but I don't really pay much attention to like the holidays. Like,
Yeah.
I'll try to do something on the equinoxes and solstices and stuff, maybe New Year's, my birthday. But it's not
Hmm.
like I'm not like dogmatic about it. But with this one, well, purchase not. So I had everyone, so I worked at a bar, so I'd print up like some of the ticket paper, right?
Hmm.
print some of that out, and have people like write down their name and then like something that they wanted. And I'd have to like kind of maybe correct how they worded it and tell them to word it differently, because some people don't really, some people are just running bad programs in their mind, and they're kind of subconsciously causing more issues in their life than they need to.
Yeah.
So knowing how to want what you want, and how to word it right is important. But so I'd have
Hmm.
people write down their name, what they wanted, and then I would do my ritual for just not summon some spirits, and at the time, like I said, I would just use a lancet, put a drop of blood on the piece of paper with their name and what they wanted, say their name, what they wanted out loud, put the drop of blood on it, burn it in my little cast iron uh, uh, dish,
Hmm.
and every single person, every single year got what they wanted. But after that first year, when I saw like that, so now like, well, Fergus now is basically my New Year's now. Like that's like when I do my big ritual for the year. I lay out all my plans for the whole year, maybe the next couple of years, and
Hmm.
but yeah, every single person, every single year got what they wanted. It was pretty
Holy
cool.
shit. So is this kind of like a conjuration or summoning of a spirit?
Oh yeah, I mean that's like, 'cause that's like where magic gets really fun. Like
Yeah.
it's just fun to summon spirits and talk
It's
to
like,
them and have
yeah,
them do stuff. Like it's really cool.
by far the most interesting, part of all of it. It's the
Yeah.
part that I find it most fascinating. So is there, like you said, like you don't like really care about the holidays or anything like that. You don't really pay attention. One thing that I've
I mean,
heard,
I do, but I don't.
yeah,
Like I said, I try to do the equinoxes and the eclipses.
yeah,
I try to, or in solstices. I try to do some stuff like that, but
yeah,
while Purge not is I do it no matter what. Like that's my New Year's.
yeah.
That's like what I kind of base the whole year around.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So I've heard like there's like different, I guess spirits like for the hour or the day or that kind of thing. So are you kind of like
Yeah.
calling upon like those, or are there like specific ones for specific time periods?
Yeah, there is. And for the let me take a sip of water real quick. For
Hmm.
the beginners out there, I really recommend getting I have it right here, Seven Spheres by Rufus Opus. And this is
Okay,
like summoning the seven planetary angels for, you know,
gotcha.
uh for Saturn, Jupiter,
Hmm.
Mars, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, the Moon. The Sun and Moon are planets, by the way. The word planet means wandering star.
Ah,
But yeah, they
kind of makes sense.
so the days of the week also line up with the planets too. So if you're going to
Hmm.
work the planets in descending hours, it's going to be every 5 days.
Hmm.
So it'll be Saturday for Saturn, Saturn day.
Hmm.
5 days later is Thor's day, Thursday, which is for Jupiter. 5 days later is Tuesday or Tears day for Mars, and
Hmm.
just so on and so forth. And then if you're working in ascending order, you start with the moons. That's on a Monday, Moon Day. Then it goes to 2 days forward, which is Mercury, uh, which is Wednesday, Woden's Day, which is for the planet Mercury, and then it just keeps going up.
Wow.
And then you have planetary hours, and how you calculate that. Well, now there's like apps and everything to do it for you and websites. But how you would calculate the planetary days, uh, you count sunrise to sunset, the amount of hours, and then you divide it by seven, and then you add the planets up through that in order. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's one thing. The planetary magic. Here's it is right here.
Hmm.
Like I said, this is Seven Spheres by Rufus Opus,
Hmm.
and I think he's a Taurus too. I think he mentions it in the book. So,
Wow.
but that lays a solid foundation for one. And a lot of people have mixed feelings about angels. Like some people prefer to stick with angels because they're safer, but a
Hmm.
lot of people, like some people get into magic because they come from like religious trauma,
Yeah.
so they get issues with that kind of stuff. People get triggered by everything. It's lame. But anyway, but one thing
True.
I like with the angels is the angels will like really heal you. Like if you work with angels for just like a couple of months, you'll look younger and healthier and have a brighter aura,
Hmm.
than you ever had. And so there's that. but it also lays a solid foundation. So once you get used to like using the planets and the planetary days, and you learn what the planets all do, and you
Hmm.
start stabilizing these energies within inside you, then all you really need to do is just swap out the angels with whatever spirits you want that are associated with those planets, so then you can start
Yeah.
building your own path workings.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I
Man,
like about it. I think
fascinating.
the
So
yeah, yeah, Seven Spheres, man, that's a
Seven
good book for
Spheres.
beginners. Yeah, by Rufus Opus. That's a good book for beginners.
I'm gonna have to check that out. So is there like a pretty big difference between like summoning the angels or summoning a demon, quote unquote, demon, or whatever somebody might call that?
Yeah.
Would you consider it a demon or do you consider it something else?
You know, I'll answer the first question first because that's a can of worms a little.
Yeah,
Not really
yeah,
a can of
yeah,
worms,
I'm
that kind
sorry.
of is. There is, I mean, as far as the mechanics go, it's not much different summoning angels than demons,
Hmm.
but like angels will work a lot slower. They're a lot safer, but they might not deliver or want to deliver. They kind of have
Gotcha.
this, you know, yeah, they're kind of,
Prestigious.
yeah, they're a little uptight.
Yeah.
It's like demons are kind of like the cool uncle that lets you cuss and swear.
Smoke cigarettes in the back.
Yeah, yeah, drinking moonshine out of the shed or something.
Hell yeah.
But so like I said, angels are solid for healing and that kind of stuff. They also kind of help connect you like with the creator, your higher self, your holy guardian angel. There's all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But demons are so much more pragmatic. They work so fast. They always deliver almost, unless it's something that's not that possible or like really not in your best interest.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll let that happen just to teach you that lesson, but pragmatically, demons just work so fast and they're almost always down to deliver. So
Yeah.
so there's that. As far as personality goes, the big difference is I would say you feel the demon's presence a lot more in the room, and they have a more distinct personality and energy to them, where angels just kind of seem like light.
Yeah.
They're just kind of lighter. And they still have their different energies. If you work with like Cassiel, the angel of Saturn, he's going to feel completely different than, like a Mercurial angel or a Jupiterian angel. So, but not a lot. One thing I do like with the angels, though, you kind of do get like a more pure and clean planetary energy if you're doing it with the planetary magic. But yeah,
Yeah.
with demons, though, like I said, they're more pragmatic. They work really fast. Uh, they'll teach you anything. They don't have any restriction on what they're going to teach you. And then, like I said, they have a more interesting and distinct personality, and that's kind of cool too.
So is there like a scrying process, like communication, like kind of what is that like? It's
Yeah,
is
good
it kind of like
question.
a is it kind of like a download, I guess?
Yeah, well, okay, so I have like a scry mirror right there. Like up here, I work with more like celestial spirits, like
Uh-huh.
angels and some of the pagan deities, and
Yeah.
downstairs I work with more infernal, I guess.
Hmm.
But but yeah, it's good to have like a scrying medium. You don't necessarily need it. But one thing I like with scrying mirrors is that they concentrate energy over time, so they kind of get stronger and smarter, just like radionics
Oh,
machines or any other
gotcha.
magical too.
Yeah.
So I like that. But you can just evoke them into a cloud of smoke, or just start summoning them and talking to them in your mind, especially after you establish a connection with them.
Yeah. Like a
And
relationship kind of.
yeah, and at first you're probably not going to notice it and feel it. It's going to take a little while to kind of cultivate some of those faculties. So the
Hmm.
best thing to do is if you're not sure you're picking up on it, because there's subtle energies. It's hard to, especially when you're in like this like material world. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to know what you're feeling, and then your logical mind will get in the way and just think there's nothing there or it's not working when they're
Yeah.
there and you're just not noticing it. So the
Hmm.
best thing to do for beginners is that if you're not picking up on it, go through the mechanics and the motions as if you are, and then just wait for it to happen. And don't ask for anything like wild and crazy. You know, for number one, it has to be physically possible. Number two, it has to be somewhat probable. But the probability is like, that there's a lot more give right there. Like you're not
Yeah.
going to like sprout giant bat wings and fly around the moon. Like,
Yeah.
so but start simple, start small. and just wait for it to come. And then once you start getting results, it'll just start cascading from there.
So are
It's
there
fun
any?
too.
Yeah,
It's super interesting to do, you know?
yeah. No, I can definitely imagine. So like the scrying process, do you like have a partner that helps, or do
No.
you kind of do it all? Do you do the summoning and scrying all yourself?
Yeah, yeah. And you know, so when you're doing an evocation, when an evocation is when you're summoning a spirit into full manifestation,
Hmm.
there's a few ways to kind of do it, but part of what you're doing is also like kind of giving the spirit a body to manifest. And like with a scrying mirror,
Oh, gotcha.
you're concentrating the energy in that one spot so that you can start kind of getting images and stuff in there, you know. So part
Yeah.
of that's going to be happening in your mind's eye, but some of it's going to be happening in your physical eyes too,
Hmm.
you know. So it takes a little practice, but it's pretty easy. I think it's in our natural biology to do this kind of stuff. I literally think magic is
Yeah.
like the whole purpose to life.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there seems to be like a huge movement to kind of hide a lot of this information. So I tend to
Oh
agree.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a part of the whole occult thing is like they're hiding like the good information and making it really hard for people to actually find while they kind of keep it themselves in a way. I
You know,
guess them being like the elite or whoever the hell has control of
yeah,
the information, but
the parasite class. Yeah. It's one of those things that's like back in the day, it was a lot more hidden, you know, but the people that were putting out stuff were probably more comparable but now it's like it's so oversaturated. It's like a different type of like bearing of information because, if you go on TikTok, dude, I mean, so much of it's a joke.
yeah.
I'm like, ah, dude.
So that yeah, that's another thing about it. For like the listener, like how do you kind of sift through some of the bullshit with the actual real stuff that's going on or some of the real stuff that you can kind of pick up on?
It's the same with like researching conspiracies, man. It's just you're just gonna have to develop that filter,
Yeah.
of like
Hmm.
weeding out the crap and
Yeah.
eat the fruit and throw away the peel. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
But as you start doing magic, you start making contact with these entities. They will start guiding your evolution. So those like all of
Yeah.
a sudden you'll just get like the right information at the right time, and new techniques will show up, new books, and like the important thing is to just get started, start working with these spirits, and and they will help you. They will help you learn and get better and grow, and
Yeah.
let them know you want to.
Oh, exactly.
Like do magic to get better at magic, and then as you start getting better at magic, you're gonna start realizing, okay, I need to work on spirit communication. Help me get better at that. My astral projection kind of sucks. How can I get better at that? So just start asking the spirits for help, and they'll start helping you, and then you'll just start getting better and better.
Yeah. Are there like any historical accounts that you kind of like look into, like John Dee or anything that kind of helps you kind of build your own kind of form of this type of magic?
You know, like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess so. For the most part, I think is the most important thing is to just get started and
Hmm.
just start doing it. That's the most important thing. But
Well, just
you
asking
know,
you personally,
yeah.
like anybody that you kind of like look up, like historically.
I mean, there was all those accounts, like Franz Barden, even Crowley, even though Crowley's a questionable character,
Yeah.
I definitely don't think he should be around children, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the John Dee and stuff. And then I guess, I mean, like I knew about the Satanic Bible, for example, when I was like 8 years old, 9 years
Hmm.
old, and all this stuff. And all that stuff lays a foundation, but it's also the combination of research and conspiracies, because so many conspiracies go back to the occult, and
Yeah,
which is why so many
exactly.
truthers are so prejudiced against the occult, because they
Yeah.
see it as like being used against us. And it's like, well, dude, first of all, magic is the ultimate white pill. Like, we don't stand a freaking chance unless we like, you know,
Yeah.
assert our, like magic is our God-given birthright. It comes from the
Hmm.
creator. You can't separate magic from yourself. People do magic all the time and they don't even know it.
Well,
Most people are
yeah.
cursing themselves every day and they have no idea. How many people do you see out in the Matrix miserable as fuck because they running these bad programs in their head and they're cursing themselves over and over again and they're
Yeah.
not aware enough to know they're doing it. I mean, it's
Well,
like
yeah, it's
everyone.
most people, yeah, I was about to say most people that I know, and honestly, it's because they're just getting bad information or just watching TV, like taking in all this terrible media and kind of replaying it out in their real lives without, like you said, without even noticing. It's kind of form of brainwashing that they don't even aware that they're a part of, you know?
Oh yeah, and it's a lot of people are miserable because of it,
So do you, yeah, so do you feel like everybody has this ability within them,
Yeah.
sort of? Yeah, I mean that's kind of like something that's like in the Bible. It's like, which I mean, whether anybody believes in it or not, I mean, but it's just like something like you have God within you, and Christians
Yeah.
don't even believe that. They're just like, kind of toss that
Yeah.
aside and continue, down the path of materialism and all that.
Yeah, how many Christians even read the Bible? You
Like,
know,
yeah, very few,
like they
to
might
be
read a
honest, very
line out
few.
of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they might read a line out of it every once in a while, but for some reason they think they know enough to tell you.
Yeah. So do
You
you
know,
use any biblical text in your magic or
you
rituals?
know, so that's a uh I mean not really. I do use like a lot of Judeo-Christian, I guess, framework because angels and demons are Judeo-Christian.
Hmm.
And I do work with both and I also work with like pagan stuff and
Yeah.
random nature spirits outside.
Yeah, I was just
But
asking. I was asking. I had David Rankin on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he mentioned like he used some text from the Old Testament, which I found super interesting. But yeah, I just figured I'd
yeah,
ask. I'm sure everybody uses or has their own because he mentioned like you can kind of build your own form of these type of rituals that work best for you. So yeah.
oh yeah.
So
And
is
that's
there
the
any?
important thing too. Because
Mhm.
once you get the ball going, once you start figuring out the mechanics, you can kind of do whatever you want. It's just like playing music, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, look what you can do with a power chord.
Hmm.
It's just two notes. You can move it around the fretboard. Like the Misfits, everything they did was just a power chord. Their music is timeless. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But with the Bible, yeah, you could use the Bible as a solid grimoire because you have all the angels, you have all the demons, you have all the apostles, and all the other characters in the Bible. You can summon all of these characters and work with them. You can
Hmm.
summon Jesus and talk with Jesus, Mary,
Holy shit. Yeah.
all of them. Moses, Archangel Michael, Raphael, Cassiel, Sakiel, all of these Belial, Azazel,
So, hmm.
Shemyaza. Like Shemyaza and Azazel are some of the best spirits you could ever work with. And then not only that, the Psalms, different lines of different
Hmm.
Psalms
Yeah.
you can use almost as like a mantra. I mean, you can use, there are Psalms you can use for prosperity. There's Psalms you can use for protection. There are Psalms you can use to destroy an enemy. And here's the funny thing too about it. So when it comes to like healing and banishing negative entities and like exorcisms and clearing out like negative spiritual energy out of a house or something, the Judeo-Christian pantheon pretty much works the best. Like Michael, Raphael, even Jesus and Mary
Really.
work insanely well for banishing negative entities. But at the same time, like there are Christians that suffer from possession a decent amount and they get negative entities attached to them. So it just
Yeah.
lets you know, like if this pantheon works so good to protect you from this, but yet you guys are still afflicted by it, it just shows that they don't understand the technology they hold in their hands,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So do you think it's kind of like a coded book for that type of thing, just for specific
I
people to be able to read, or is that just like
I
something
don't know,
extra, a part
man.
of it? Yeah. It could
You
be,
know,
honestly, it could be
the
anything.
the Bible and Quran and even the Vedics and everything else, like it's because you start getting into history and then which kind of ties into conspiracies. It's hard to say
Hmm.
like how valid a lot of this stuff is, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day it doesn't matter because it will still work. It
Yeah.
still works.
Well,
And
even a
that's the
lot
only thing
of,
that should matter.
mhm. Oh yeah, well,
Yeah,
even a
you're
lot
saying,
of a couple of the texts, like between the Bible and the Quran, they both have like King Solomon in there, and they both have different accounts of him and what he did and how he built things.
yeah.
Like even in the Quran, he was like summoning a demon to build like temples and architecture and stuff. Which is that like so like historically is that? I mean, I guess that's where the Solomonic magic came from. Was that from him? Is that was he like the first, or was there like that kind of thing happening before him that he kind of picked up on?
I think people have been doing magic since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
Like I think it was like right there with like building a hut, learning how to build a fire, getting laid, hunting,
Hmm.
magic. I think it was
Yeah.
like right there with everything. So, but the I think more Christians need to read the Quran because I do think the Quran and the Bible are supposed to go hand in hand together, and there are different accounts of these stories in
Hmm.
them, and then some of the names too. Like I'm pretty sure like Eli and Ali are the same person. I would almost guarantee it, because that's
Oh
one of the
well.
things. Like the Quran in Arabic, they use the letter A a lot, and the Bible uses the letter E a lot.
Gotcha.
I think they're talking about the same thing though. So,
Yeah.
but it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean, because you know, again, it goes back to eating the fruit and throwing away the peel, and then just using what works. Because there's a lot of truth in the Bible and the Quran. I think I think it's encoded. I don't think it's easy to find what it's trying to tell you.
Yeah.
So I think there's a there, but when you start getting, because I mean, we're talking about the Vatican at the end of the day when we're talking about this stuff,
Exactly.
and they're not exactly a trustworthy institution, and the Vatican basically waged war on all of humanity and won, and we're living in the aftermath of that. Like they put in like all the banking institutions we have. People want to say it's the filthy J words, but it's really the Vatican. The
Gypsies? No, I'm kidding.
yeah, like and they built all the first colleges, the whole college system. I have
Hmm.
the feeling Protestantism is from the Vatican too. So like it's pretty easy to look at these organizations as enemies of humanity. So it's hard to put a lot of faith in it, but there's definitely
Yeah.
stuff in there that's useful. So it's one of those mind fucks. Just what
Yeah.
it is.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And even our entire timeline was created by the Vatican.
Yeah.
So we don't know what year it is. We don't know what year ancient Egypt and all that stuff happened. Like the Scaligerian timeline was basically Scaliger basically came up with it, and on behalf of the church.
Yeah, wasn't it
you
for the
know
Pope? Yeah, the Pope like
yeah.
requested like a new calendar or something from yeah, I could be wrong, but
Yeah, so I mean, we really don't know like what biblical geography and the biblical timeline really is.
yeah.
So you really got to start applying that kind of, and no one applies the scientific method to our timeline. It's weird. When you consider how many scientists are atheists and they're always calling out the church, and so it's just crazy to me they haven't connected that like the church came up with our timeline.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, the science with everything also is pretty interesting because I mean, along with the history, everybody just acts like everything's settled and they already know everything, which is,
Yeah.
clearly not the case.
Oh
But
yeah, dude. I mean, it's 2025. No one's ever seen a virus. No one's ever isolated one. No one's ever seen it. And they went so far as changing the definition of isolate just for virology because they couldn't isolate a virus or find one. No one's ever seen a photon, an electron, a proton, a neutron. It's like,
yeah,
these are like foundations of like what we think we know, and none of it can be proven. You
yeah.
know?
Well, yeah, even like the origins of science and all that, didn't it come from like alchemy and that kind of
Yeah,
whole thing?
totally.
Yeah,
And before it was like natural philosophy, and I think we should go back to that.
yeah. All of it's like I love looking into it, even like on certain like king and queen's courts that they held back in like the 17th century, 16th century. They had alchemists like sitting on like John Dee was an alchemist sitting on Queen Elizabeth's court. Like
Yeah, and astrologers. Oh yeah, I mean J.P. Morgan, man, he was the guy that coined that term that a lot of truthers use and stuff. That millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do. And
Okay.
he had like $1 million watch that kept track of all the planets and the retrogrades and where they were directly over like a North Pole projection map. And God, I would love to have a watch like that.
Holy
God,
shit.
it'd be
Yeah.
so awesome. But yeah, he would like base all of his investments and everything. That's why he had it, so he could, make an investment like right at the right time,
Yeah.
or
So there,
or sell something right at the right time and whatever.
yeah, they're like kind of historical accounts of some of these like mainstream characters using astrology or some form of magic or in some type of way. Have you ever looked into the seances held at the White House? No, it's kind of a random question, but
No, but the whole idea of the seance stuff is really fascinating. And you know, uh, like the area that really blew that whole thing wide open was upstate New York, and I
really.
think and I think that played a role in Joseph Smith. To bring it back to Joseph Smith, I think that
Yeah.
played a role in his understanding of the occult, which he later started putting into his religion.
So
And I
he,
wonder if he didn't get murdered.
yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if he didn't get murdered, if what that religion would have turned into, because he was incorporating ceremonial magic, Freemasonry, and religion all into one umbrella.
Holy
And I
shit.
really wonder, like, if he didn't get killed so young, if the church would be a completely different thing than it is today.
Yeah, so that whole kind of religion started from him finding like some sort of golden tablet, right? Or
Yeah,
some
well,
like a
they don't come out and tell you this, but he basically channeled the golden tablets.
holy shit,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
So how did that whole process happen?
Yeah, I mean, he was using a hat, a top hat with these seer stones, and actually, I found a stone that looks just like one of his seer stones that he had. That's on display at like one of the museums for him,
Hmm.
and I use it for a house for a servitor. A servitor is an artificial spirit for anyone. It's like a thought form or like a psychic robot or something.
Hmm.
But uh, but yeah, he channeled it out of a hat. He would just put the seer stones in the hat, and the old hats had like mercury around the rim.
Yeah.
They had some process that involved mercury, which is like an alchemical substance. So I think that was probably part of the logic of why he was using the hat to scry. And yeah, he just channeled a divinely inspired book. He just channeled it. Yeah,
Yeah, I kind of see like the whole attack on like Mormons, they're crazy, whatever, the
they
whole
kind of
main,
are, man. I
well,
live
the
in
whole,
Utah, man.
yeah, well, I'm sure like, yeah, yeah, like what religion has like made it into has kind of corrupted ultimately what was originally intended. But you kind of see that, like you see them attacked like hardcore compared to other subsects of Christianity. And I often wonder, is there a reason behind that? And there's like obviously there seems to be with him finding those tablets, or like kind of conjuring that
Yeah.
information,
Well, the difference between, in my opinion, this is going to offend some people, but
offend
it is
him.
what it is. It is what it is. But the difference between Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon and the other holy texts is Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon in the mid 1800s, where we have somewhat of an accurate record of it. Where
Okay.
like with the Bible, we don't have that accurate record. And it
Yeah.
happened back enough to where people just assumed that everything was top notch and no one made any mistakes. No
Yeah.
one had any ulterior motives. It's legit. And so it's kind of funny that they criticize Joseph Smith so harshly when it's like, dude, I
Yeah.
mean, the only
They don't
reason why you're
even.
criticizing him is because like we can actually document what they did and we can't go back and document what the church did originally.
Yeah. Well, that's something super fascinating because Christians don't even look into like where any of that came from or any of their own texts come from and who translated it and if it
Oh yeah.
even is anything close to being accurate to what was originally there.
And even some of the stuff that we consider to be older that we found later on, like the Nagamati, like I have my doubts when you look into like how the 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 Nag Hammadi was found, the Gnostic text. It was in like, I think it was like 1947, 1948 or something, 49.
Hmm.
Some kid in like Afghanistan or Pakistan, I think it was Afghanistan, might have been Pakistan. It was like in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. He was like throwing some rocks around, and he hears like a clay. He throws it up on this mountain. He hears like a clay vase or like a cylinder break. So he's like, "What was that?" So he climbs up there and he finds all these like clay vessels full of all these like scrolls that end up being the Nag Hammadi. It is just like, it just seems so weird to me that some kid basically tripped over himself, finds this like huge score in the middle of nowhere where no one lives, and the people that do live there are basically barefoot, half naked. They can't read or write, like, and then boom, there's an Agamadi. And it's the same with the Sumerian text, the cuneiform. Like that wasn't found until like I think like the 1940s, and I don't think it was translated until like the late 1950s, maybe something like that. I might be getting the dates mixed up. And then people think like this predates Christianity, is so old, and it's just like, have you seen what cuneiform looks like? How could anyone even translate that they wanted
Yeah.
to unless they had the cipher and made it up themselves?
Yeah.
So either the translations are completely bogus, or the text themselves are completely bogus.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
know?
mean, that's another thing that you kind of have to like wonder is like, how do they translate a language they have no idea where it even came from?
Yeah,
Um,
especially something like cuneiform, and then with the pyramids, like there people were like painting the hieroglyphs on in there in the early 1900s,
yeah,
and so there's so much about our past that we just don't know, and we like to think we know, but we have no idea what these people thought. And then the
yeah,
fact that like all of these pagan cultures have the exact same story as the Bible, it's just different names, different types of characters, but it's the exact same story. They all have the exact same creation with the flood, and then the paradise and the fall of man into the flood, and all that. They all thought the Earth was a stationary topographical plane with a hard, fast barrier around it. Like they
hmm,
all have the exact same story, and it's like, okay, so I like to think that it's based off the same thing. It's all based off the same stuff, which is why you see so many similarities. But it's also
yeah,
possible that the Vatican planted all this stuff, because the Vatican owns like 99% of all of our ancient history. They're the ones that discovered it, translated it. Ancient Greece wasn't discovered, ancient Rome and ancient Greece wasn't discovered until like 1450,
damn,
you know?
yeah,
So it's like, did they discover it or did they fabricate it?
yeah,
You know,
true, yeah,
because
exactly,
I mean, you're literally taking the words of psychopaths, you know,
yeah.
like so it's, yeah, it's like the more you learn, the less you know.
Yeah, to
The
me, there always seems to be like a little bit of truth in the larger bullshit that they're trying to push. Like there might be a little bit that you can take away from like the historic account of whatever they're trying to push. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, a lot of it, like they can easily just make the shit up, you know?
yeah. How are you gonna lose ancient Greece and ancient Rome?
Yeah.
How are you just gonna like, oh, one day you're vacuuming, oh, there's ancient Greece, there's ancient Rome, cool. After you're doing some spring cleaning,
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah, and no one, I mean, there's like the Anatoly Fomenko. There's some people that kind of got into like the new chronology and started challenging a lot of these texts and a lot of this timeline, but for the most part, people aren't challenging it at all, you know. And I'm
Yeah.
surprised the atheists aren't challenging it because they have a vested interest in challenging it.
Yeah.
But because they're like bootlickers for the scientific cult,
One thing,
like
yeah,
they just won't challenge anything.
exactly. One thing that stands out to me is just as like a conspiracy theorist or somebody that kind of looks into that type of thing, like every single major account of any historical event happening in America has almost all been lied about, especially in recent history. You look at COVID, 9/11,
Oh, yeah.
Any kind of war that they've started was always off of bullshit, weapons of mass destruction that they never found, that sort of
Mhm.
thing, or even
And it goes all the
Vietnam.
way back. You
Yeah.
go to Desert Storm where they
Hmm.
said that uh that that the Iraqi army came in, took the babies out of the incubators, left them to die on the floor. That was all made up. Gulf of Tonkin for
Yep.
Vietnam was all made
Vietnam.
up.
Hmm.
All of it was.
Yeah.
Lusitania for World War One, Pearl Harbor for World War Two,
Yep.
the sinking of the U.S. Maine for the Spanish-American War, all of it.
Yeah. So like looking at
Even the
all that,
Civil War, they
yeah.
false flagged the Civil War.
Yeah, I mean, that is one that's like super interesting to look into. It just looks like there's something else completely going on in the Civil War. The photos that they actually have,
It's just a couple guys standing around, nothing
yeah,
going on.
there's zero photos of actual like fighting happening. Yeah, it just all seems too odd. Even the photos of Abraham Lincoln are, I don't know, just something is odd about the entire thing. I can't put my finger on it yet, but do you have any kind of thoughts on that? The
Uh,
Civil War specifically?
I
If
mean, once you go that far back in time, I mean, it's impossible to say.
yeah,
I
well,
mean, you
yeah,
look at the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church rewrote their history like 5 or 6 times.
yeah,
You know, so you go back to the Civil War. I think the South was in the right. I think the North were a bunch of bastards for what they did to the South.
hmm
So
yeah. Well,
but I'm
one
also
thing,
originally from the South, so
yeah, one thing that
maybe that's just my bias.
yeah, I saw that's not taught in school, and at least I was never taught it. Like Abraham Lincoln was implementing a income tax nationwide, or
Yeah, it was a tariff.
however
Yeah,
much. Yeah,
it was
so
like over 40%.
So like, yeah, there's just a lot more to the story, I think, than just slavery that people want to talk about. But yeah, anyway, but when you're looking at all of those like historical events and like obviously they've been lied about, it makes me wonder like the people that just blindly follow it all, even though they know that it's
Dude,
horseshit.
especially the last 25 years, like when you look at I mean, you could even go back like 2 years before that. So the predecessor for 9/11 was Flight 800. And so that was like 1999, I want to say. But
Hmm.
basically, like this airplane takes off. I think it was like from like Michigan or somewhere in the Northeast, and it blows up in midair. And they immediately blame it on some Muslim guy. And this is just basically just a test run for 9/11. So what they're really doing is just trying to see like how information gets disseminated, who comes with what. But anyway, like uh, a couple of people start coming out saying they saw a missile fly from this military base and blow up the plane, and then like 500, maybe 1,000 people come out and say they saw this missile hit the plane and blow it up. That we blew it up ourselves. And so they ran this story all like for like a couple of months straight, nonstop. And then as soon as they, figure out that it was a missile, it was blown up on purpose, they bury it, everyone forgets about it. And then like 2 years later, 9/11 happens, and no one remembered Flight 800 on the morning of 9/11. They all had like this weird amnesia,
Yeah.
when it came to Flight 800. And so like I knew that was a test run when I mean, fuck, dude, I was like 17, I think. I think I was
Hmm.
17 when that happened. And I knew it, man. I knew there was going to be something bigger coming. And then, Bill Clinton gets the BJ in the White House, which I think was a setup because when you look at like the Bush and Gore debates back in the day, they were so pathetic, and the only thing they brought up was Bill Clinton being a degenerate, and then they had to steal the election for Bush, and which like the big discrepancy was down in Florida where his brother was governor,
Hmm.
and then everyone voted to look into it and challenge the election. It came down to just one vote and it landed on Al Gore, and he just handed the election over to Bush. So you realize right then and there that they set up the BJ with Bill Clinton in the White House to try to get George Bush in
Yeah.
office, the W. And then Al Gore handed the election over to him. And then, like the very next year, 9/11 happens. And then we go in the war in the Middle East and we had all the neocons and Halliburton and everything in place. So you start seeing how all of that was just set up bang, 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 bang. And then after that, Iraq with the weapons of mass destruction. Then you had Syria with the chemical weapons that didn't happen. That was a psyop too. And then what we did to Libya and Muammar Gaddafi was just horrible, man. And
Yeah.
it's like the media, the last 25 years has literally lied and been wrong about everything. And people just keep forgetting about it when they bring up the next thing. You
Yep.
remember just a few years ago, it was like COVID, Omicron, boosters, boosters, boosters. And then the very next day, war in Ukraine, no more talk of COVID or Omicron or boosters.
Hmm.
It was just like, and then the very next day, everyone had like Ukrainian flags everywhere. And that was another thing, dude, where was it 2014? This guy gets elected in Ukraine. The CIA goes in there, they stage a coup, they overthrow him. They put in Zelensky just to have this fake proxy war with Russia,
Yeah.
and it's nuts, man. And the whole thing with
Bioweapon labs on the
oh,
border,
oh yeah,
that type of
and
shit.
the thing with Russia is like Russia's always been like this make-believe enemy that we had. Like
Yeah.
Russia was the country that we worked with to overthrow Germany in World War II. They're also the country that helped us with our propaganda to bury the war crimes that the West and Soviets did during that war. And then right after that, uh, we take them to the North Pole and to the South Pole for like high jump and deep freeze. And then like right after that, when we start like shooting up rockets up into the stratosphere, mapping out what a lot of people think is the hard fast barrier. They Russia was a country we trusted with Operation Dominic and Fishbowl. And then they were the country that we trusted with the space race. We're having this pretend space race with Russia. We took them up into space like in like the 1970s. They're the only other country to go up there, other than the U.S.
Mhm.
And then there's only two countries that really run the ISS, and it's Russia and the United States. There's other countries involved, but the only two countries that actually run it, Russia and the ISS. Like Russia's always been this make-believe enemy
Yeah.
that we had that's been used like this like propaganda football. And then you look at like Zelensky, we put him in office. He's an actor. He's known for like playing the piano with his penis, which I guess is kind of cool,
Yeah.
Not
Hey.
really, but
But yeah, he was like a comedian that became president on TV before it actually happened in real life, right?
yeah, totally.
That yeah, like a lot of them are actors. Like it's
Yeah, it's all just show, and all these what's left of the left now in America, because so many of them, like 80% of the people that voted for Trump were like liberals just a few years ago.
Mhm.
And like how they are all going after Elon Musk. Okay, NASA runs all of the space agencies in the world. You can't be involved in the space agency without NASA. All right. So Elon Musk is totally owned and controlled by NASA. And then those crappy electric cars he sells, he can't make those cars cheap enough to sell them at a competitive price. So the government has to pay him like $10,000, $15,000 for each car he sells so that he can afford to sell them cheap enough to have a competitive market. Like, so everyone's all freaking out that he's going to like audit the government, Doge, and all this stuff. It's like, dude, he's not going to audit anything he's not told to. He's a complete puppet of the US government,
Yeah. It's kind
but
of he's looks like he's operating as one, like
yeah.
live on TV almost every day. So it's kind
Oh
of
yeah, like smoking a blunt with Joe Rogan and
yeah. I mean now,
yeah.
yeah, now
Or was it a joint? I never watched that episode. I don't really, you know, Joe Rogan's like the big show on TV, so sometimes he gets a good guest on, but I don't care about
yeah,
Elon.
it's rare these days. I feel like that I kind of pull up a show because there's just other podcasts that have way more interesting guests than he
Yeah.
does. Which I'm not no shade thrown. He's obviously the biggest podcast for a reason. But man, I
Hmm.
there at a certain point, like he definitely shuts down conversations when it goes a little too far. And that's kind of why I don't like listen anymore. I've heard him shut down like Eddie Bravo just like it
Dude,
immediately when he brings shit up and like other guests, but
Duncan Trussell, man, because Duncan Trussell said there's one episode, man, it's just so
I
telling
love it.
too.
Yeah.
So Duncan's like, I'm kind of worried about you. Like, what if, like someone in the CIA gets a hold of you and stuff? Joe Rogan immediately gets triggered and
Hmm.
starts lashing at Duncan. It was like, hey, remember when you
Whoa.
went through that breakup and you were like sleeping on my couch because you were a depressed loser? And Duncan's just kind of like,
Oh,
what do you got to bring up old shit anyway? And then he starts overcompensating and starts bringing back up the moon landing because he used to be really big on the moon landing, and then he
yeah,
stopped believing in it. He didn't really stop believing. He got paid off, but
yeah,
but that episode was just so telling because yeah, because Duncan, like, basically, like, I'm worried that, like the CIA is going to get a hold of you or someone's going to get a hold of you. And, then Joe Rogan immediately buries the conversation and starts attacking Duncan and then brings up the moon landing after not talking about it for so many years and
yeah, kind of.
overcompensating.
Yeah, which is like I did notice that in one of his episodes, he did have like a shift like about like the moon landing and like that whole thing. He spent almost an entire episode like debunking the moon landing. I was like, that's kind of cool. I mean, talking shit about NASA like the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like years prior he was like defending it like as hard as he could. So
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame the guy because at the end of the day, you got to do what's right for your family,
yeah,
and, so I mean, COVID kind of shifted my understanding, like, I mean, most human beings are just shit people and they're not ever going to wake up. They don't want to wake up and they're extremely dangerous. These people would throw you in a concentration camp and torture you to death just because the government and the media convinced them they had to do it. That you were different than them. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, it sucks, man, because I'm a nice guy, but I've never despised humanity more than after COVID, and I'm trying to work through that. But it's just so hard after seeing what I saw on the West Coast and how
Yeah.
retarded everyone went.
Yeah, just kind of like how evil like shit became to like how people kind of like I just feel like people were like fell for it so easily to just pit themselves against each other and
Yeah,
it's
and
kind of sad. Even
some
their own
of
family members and some of their friends have like I'm
it
never
broke up
talking to
families. Yeah,
yeah, I mean it's absolutely insane that somebody that you don't know on a TV screen can give you a message that will break up like your family. It's
it's like for me, it's one thing for like liberals in New York City to fall for it,
mhm.
because they're really not that smart and they're in such a condensed area where like a disease would be terrifying if you believed in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But West Coast liberals were like geniuses when it came to they ate all organic. They're all about natural cures. They were anti-big pharma. They were raising awareness about fluoride and GMOs. The two counties I lived in Washington, Skagit and Whatcom County, both counties didn't have fluoride in the water because the liberals fought tooth and nail to get it taken out. And they were like
Wow.
educating people and having like stuff at the co-ops and teaching people about the dangers of fluoride. Got it taken out of the water. Uh, the co-op in my town had this giant movie rack with like the world according to Monsanto, the future of food Incorporated, just raising all this awareness about GMOs.
Yeah.
And then, it was like 2014, everyone was totally normal and totally cool. By the end of 2015, everyone was completely insane. It was
Yeah.
just so, and the thing that bothers me is the West Coast liberals would not have fallen for COVID if it wasn't for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And it's just so crazy. Like you guys, you know, like after George Bush and Barack Obama, you couldn't see through that,
Yeah.
and what did he even do wrong? Like because he wanted to check people's IDs before they come in the country and make sure they're not a felon. I mean, he
Oh
didn't
yeah,
even do anything.
a lot of it's like common sense stuff that they will just flat out deny, which is like, hey, this should be a process that should be happening with any type of country to be a country. So, and then they're
Yeah.
like, it's just, a lot of it's common sense that they like the media basically convince them, hey, that's wrong and it's hateful and man, the amount of people that have just fallen for it without even questioning it is what baffles me the most. But do you think any of these like huge worldwide type events or even something like 9/11, do you think like that could be some sort of ritual at like a
Oh
higher
yeah,
like a
dude.
higher level?
I mean, the fact it chose 9/11, for the date for it, like
Yeah,
rescue
true.
911, emergency, panic, 911, 911, call
Hmm.
911, like, I mean, right down to the T,
Yeah,
And then the numerology in it, flight 19 hijackers, flight 19, flight 91, the Pentagon, even like 9/11, 2001 adds up to five. Five is the number for the planet Mars. The Pentagon gets hit. Which the Pentagon again is our war center for the country. Again,
Mhm.
it's symbolized by the number five. It even extends to a pentagram. And oh yeah, it's even I think 77 feet above the ground, 77 feet tall. So you
Okay.
can count that as Venus 77, or you can count it as 14, which would be five. And Mars, the whole thing, man. I mean, all of it is. And I mean, this is why truthers are so prejudiced against magic and the occult. Like, even though, like, I think it's the whole purpose and meaning of life. Like, what else are you gonna do, man? like,
Yeah.
like magic's fun.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of brings out like it's just a hidden and unexpected element of life, it feels
Oh,
like.
yeah.
Or
And
like a
like I
limit,
said,
like kind of like a limitless one at
it
that.
it is fairly like it has some limitations, but there's times where even today I'm like, wow, I can't believe I just did that.
Well, yeah, you take
And
something like astral projection or something like that, or just anything kind of like if you're into the if you've ever checked out the Monroe Institute, that kind of
oh yeah, yeah.
what is it
I don't have my
when they flash the coordinates in front of them, or they just give them the coordinates and they can picture it in their head. I forgot what it's called, but some
Yeah,
sort of
yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And the military uses astral projection for the most part. Like, there are people that are pretty good at it. Like, I'm pretty good at it. Uh, and I'll give some tips on that after I say this.
yeah.
But they kind of use astral projection and remote viewing sort of like as the wisdom of the mob. Are you familiar with like the wisdom of the mob?
I don't think
Like,
so.
let's say you have like a certain amount of jelly beans in a jar, right?
Hmm.
You get like 10 people guessing the number, it'll be all over the place. But once you get like 1,000 people, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people guessing the amount of jelly beans in the jar, you can take the amount of people that uh 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 so basically just take all the numbers that everyone guessed, add
Hmm.
them up, and then divide it by the amount of people that guessed for those what was in there,
Hmm.
and then it's almost always 100% accurate.
Holy shit.
And that's kind of how they use like remote viewing. And part of that is because when you're doing magic and astral projection, all this stuff, it is getting filtered through your subconscious, and the subconscious can be a messy place. So like the color red to one person might mean like a barn, or the dog Clifford, or a fire hydrant, or a fire truck. So they'll have like 30 people, 50 people remote view something, they write everything down, and then they take all that data to kind of like go through and you know kind of sift through the inconsistencies of the subconscious.
Hmm. Man, that's super interesting. I mean, like, didn't a lot of that come from government kind of programs, or did they just hijack? Like, did they find somebody doing it and then kind of like bring them into
I
the?
think people have been doing it. I mean,
Oh yeah,
look
true.
at
Yeah.
going back to the Quran, man. Look at Muhammad, when he flies on his magic rug. You know what
Hmm.
the magic rug is? It's a prayer rug. All the Muslims pray on a rug, right? He astral projected over this battle and
Oh,
saw everything. They look at it as he physically flew on this
yeah,
magic carpet over the battle, but he was astral projecting. Yeah, I
yeah. That
mean,
makes.
it as long as time.
So you said that you had a couple tips on it.
Yeah. So one of the things I find with astral projection, so there's two different kinds. You go out of the body when you're sleeping. That's a type of astral projection. Like, not much different than a lucid dream. It's just a stronger, more powerful lucid dream.
Hmm.
But when you're doing it when you're awake, one of the things I think is the best way to get good at it is doing distance healing, or for people that are more on a darker path or into like psychic vampirism, to use distant feeding. But it's the same thing.
Hmm.
Distance healing, you're giving someone energy. Distance feeding, you're taking the energy. But when
Right.
but when you're doing distance healing, you'll start. So I'll go to this one story, right?
Hmm.
There was this one old timer at the bar that I worked at. He would always come in and drink every day. He was from Alaska. Coolest dude, man. I love talking to the guy. Just an old Alaskan commercial fisherman. He owned a couple bars in Alaska, and now he just hangs out and drinks at our bar, in Skagit. And all of a sudden, I didn't notice him there for a couple of days. And I was like, "Hey, what's up with old man Don?" And they're like, "You didn't hear?" And I was like, "No, like, he's dying. He's in the hospital." I'm like, and I like the dude, so I
Hmm.
go home, like print out a picture for me, and I go home and I, do my meditations, get in my trance, get in my frame of mind, and then I start zapping him, was cleaning his aura, doing some energy healing on him. And like once I started like zapping him, I was kind of anchoring there. Suddenly I could actually see the whole room. I could see the equipment. I could see
Wow.
the bed that he's in.
Hmm.
And it worked. He came back. He came back and had a few more drinks, man.
Holy shit. That's really
But
cool.
yeah, he ended up passing away over during the COVID lockdown. But I had no idea. There was nothing I could do to,
Yeah.
I go back. I was like, what happened? So that's another thing with healing. Is there's no escaping death in the long run. You can buy
Yeah.
people time. But when it's your time to go, it's your time to go. This is how it is.
So what about the astral projection, the darker side? I forgot what you called it.
Oh, distance feeding.
Yeah.
That's for like psychic
Hmm.
vampirism, and it's pretty easy. And like I don't practice psychic vampirism. I did it just to learn the technique,
Hmm.
and as a technique, I mean, you have to. It's one of those things you have to do at least a few times,
Hmm.
just because you learn so much from it. But you basically just visualize the person, go into your meditative trance, visualize the person in front of you. Some people use like a picture of the person. I've been going out of body my whole life and stuff. I'm pretty solid on the astral, so
Hmm.
I usually don't have to do that. But you, it's best to use your left hand, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, especially as you get good at it. But
Hmm.
your left hand pulls in energy better. Your right hand projects energy better, but it really doesn't matter. But you send a psychic tendril to that person, and you pierce their aura, and then you just start as you breathe in, just pulling their life force into your body and circulating it through your stomach and through your body. But you want to filter it. You want to take the good energy, clean energy, and filter it, and then take all the bad energy and run it back to them. And there are some noticeable side effects to it,
Hmm.
and most people are nasty, but
Yeah.
tendrils are really important to start using. You can do a lot of cool stuff with tendrils, including with healing and stuff. Tendrils are super, and for scanning auras and stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with tendrils, and with and being able to tap into an energy source, clean that energy and pull it inside, and then run the dirty energy back is another important skill to know. Like you'll get so much better at psychic development, energy healing, and all that stuff if you practice psychic vampirism, even just one, two, three, or four times.
Yeah.
It's one of those techniques. It's like worth its weight in gold. But dude, I didn't like it, man. I don't like the feeling of nasty. People are
Yeah.
nasty. And so I'll pull up. So I have a vampire box. It looks
Oh,
just like
damn.
this that I make.
Hmm.
You can see the two jacks right here. But so
Yeah.
this one has a red light. This is just a regular wishing machine where the input is a slot and the output is the top right here. But the
Hmm.
vampire box is pretty much the same thing. It has a blue light. I was going to have one ready, but they're all being used right now. Where you put your witness sample in here, and it strips the energy clean, filters it, runs the good energy to the output plate, and filters all the bad energy back to the source. And uh, that thing's pretty solid. I use a
Yeah.
picture of the sun when I do that for myself. But you can do a lot of cool stuff with that thought form technique with the automatic drawing. You can create, like, let's say you're under a magical attack, and this is something that happens in my line of work a lot. uh, it's just a real problem with some of the people that are into magic and witchcraft. A lot of them are just, you know, some of them are just like bottom feeders, where they're just kind of like trying to bite at your ankles.
Yeah.
Because some people will put a curse on you and they're not even really being malicious about it. They're just trying to see if they can, or testing you to see if you're the real deal,
Yeah.
So that's something you have to deal with. But you can create a thought form that will collect all of that incoming magical attack, and you put that in the input. So it collects all that magic attack coming to you, strips it clean, runs the energy to the output where you make a thought form that sends it all back, like nukes them, or like I use. I don't want to give up. I don't want to give up my secret sauce because on that either, really, because it
Yeah.
works pretty well, and I have a vested. But
Yeah.
anyway, you get the idea where you can collect the energy, strip it clean, and send it back to whoever messes with you, and it works so good. I mean,
Damn.
it's one of those things like if you're like a serious magician and you're active in forums and stuff, and you're making content, you should probably have at least one or two vampire boxes. And another thing, you know how I mentioned you can daisy chain the machines together with the jacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I like to do, it's called a hunter killer system, where I connect three machines together. The first box is a power station where I use like a picture of the sun, and then I'll use like a magic square for like Mars and Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
And the middle box looks for any potential threat before it happens. And then the third box neutralizes the potential threat before it happens. And I actually made servitors for my hunter killer system, and they work super good. And then I use here's another thing, man. A lot of people don't know you can do this with radionics with servitors. Uh, you can use radionics to splice attributes to your servitors. So you can like with my like hunter servitor, I spliced it with all of the demons from the Goetia that can look into the future and warn you of any incoming magical attacks, sniff out who your enemies are. You know, they can see the past, present, the future, all that kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then my killer servitor, I spliced with the the more aggressive and ambitious
Yeah.
spirits from the Goetia, basically all the killers. And works great. Works great. And not a lot of people know you can splice servitors. And you can also splice servitors with like attributes from people. So, you know, you can essentially steal secrets this way if you're psychic enough and receptive enough, and if you're good enough at making servitors. But let's say you want to make a servitor to get better at magic, you can take like all these like occultists, even guys that have been dead 500 years, and you can splice everything they knew about magic into your servitor.
Hmm.
You know, it takes like a couple of
Damn.
weeks to splice them and stuff, but I usually
Yeah.
splice like three things at a time. But yeah, it takes a little while. But not a lot of people know you can do that, but it's pretty cool when you do it.
Holy shit. Is there anything like any other kind of techniques that you kind of throw into this kind of practice that maybe not everybody might do?
You know, okay, for example, right? When I first got into radionics, I was dealing with a lot of stress. I was working a lot, and my little brother had cancer and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm not a stress eater. When I get really stressed out, I get skinny. And so I started working out again, and I used radionics to increase my testosterone. And all I used was the molecule, the you know
Mm-hmm.
the 2D molecule for testosterone, Ares, god of war, and then like one of the bodybuilders from the golden age that had like optimal genetics. And I bulked up fast,
Oh,
you know,
shit.
back then. And that was, you know, I never go to the doctor. Like I'm a West Coast hippie, you
Yeah.
know, like I'm into like natural cures and
Got
shit
the
like that. So
apothecary.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
but it's that's one of those experiments that would have been a good thing to document if I was going and getting my blood work done to see how much my testosterone actually increased.
Yeah, but
But it
obviously, like
worked.
you
It
felt, yeah,
worked.
you felt it, like that,
Yeah.
because you can obviously feel it within your body, like when it kind of happens. And I'm sure, like you're pretty in tune with yourself, like
Yeah,
just
totally.
knowing everything that you've kind of been through. So,
And then there was when I first moved into this house here in Utah, I got you can't really see it, but I have like this huge scar right here, another one right here. I got bit breaking up a pit bull fight, and I love pit bulls, you know, I
mhm.
love them. But anyway,
Yeah,
a fight happened. It wasn't my dog's fault, but you know, my girlfriend was kind of in shock, and you know, because usually like if something happens, like I'll grab one, she'll grab the other or something. You know, if
hmm
there's a dog or something, or I'll just grab my dog. You know, it works really well when you have an aggressive dog off his chain coming at you. Point your finger and yell "Go home" really loud. So we kind of have that thing going because you know we don't
really,
want our dog to get in a fight because if he ever bites back, you know, pit bulls get put down all the time for no reason.
yeah,
But anyway, so I went to break him up. I got bit. I had like this, probably like this gash like this big with my
Damn.
muscle just sticking out. My muscle was just
Ugh.
sticking out of it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I just used radionics to heal it, and it turned out just fine. Didn't go to the doctor. It was like I said, my muscle was like literally
Dang.
sticking out of my arm.
Holy shit.
And it
Yeah.
healed up just fine. The scar looks pretty nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man,
So
that's pretty cool. Well, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your expertise. I'd love to have you back on the show to talk again.
yeah,
I'm
totally.
gonna let everybody know where to find you and all of that.
Yeah. My main YouTube channel is My Apotheosis. My Instagram, I'm sure you'll have all the links down below. I'll send them to
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
Uh, my Instagram is Lord Byron Jester, all lowercase, all one word. LordByronJester.com is my domain. My website isn't functioning right now, but I still have it. Also, um, I also sell my machines over at jsgarrett.net. He's one of my colleagues, someone you
Cool.
should probably maybe talk to at some point.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's about it.
Listen close, it's the occult folk. It's the occult folks.